Welcome to the Finance Committee meeting of August 29th. It's our first meeting after the start of the new terms. So on our agenda tonight will be elections of new officers and administrators' review of the warrant. And we also have several warrant articles that they'll be voting on tonight. But we do have several new faces, just so everybody gets a chance to meet everybody and learn a little bit about ourselves. We're going to go around the table, introduce yourself, a little bit of background, and that way everybody gets to know a little bit about each other. I will start. Mark Chadell, current chairman. I've been on the board for 8 years, starting my 9th year. I've been either vice chair or chair over 6 of those 8 years. My background is construction accounting. I've been in private industry for 20 years. Both my kids went through the school system, and I've been actively involved in scouting for 51 years next month.
Oh.
Denny?
That's impressive.
Yeah, jeez, that was a big number.
I'm 60 years old, so
Looks good.
I'm Denny Crowley. I've been involved with this committee for a long time now. I think I've lost track. It was on for a long time, off for a few, then back on. So I grew up in Walpole. Basically, I've lived here. I turned 50 this year, so I think there was a 10-year period I was gone for college and a little bit afterwards. So we'll call it 40 out of the 50 years I've been here. I ran a company that was based here in Walpole for 26 years. I sold that 6 years ago. I now work in the private investment and technology world. And yeah, I coached lacrosse forever. I had 3 kids that have been through the Walpole school system, 2 in college, and 1 who's a senior, so almost done. Then I gotta start paying. Then one who'll be a senior in college, so I'll keep the double tuition payment for a little while afterwards. Keep going from there.
Hi, good evening. I'm Larry Pittman. I was on the committee for a while, stepped off like Denny, and then this is round 2, I guess, for me. Chair, vice chair, I think, at one point, too. My background is commercial finance, doing that for a long time. And 3 kids all went through Walpole schools, live over in East Walpole, involved with Bird Park. I'm on a board at the Salvation Army, bunch of stuff. Keeps me busy. That's it.
I'm Mark Sullivan, been living in Walpole since 1998, Finance Committee member since 2018, it says, and also a town meeting member before that. My former history is with Verizon Communications, primarily international. Currently, I'm the director for the Massachusetts Office of International Trade, so I try to convince international companies to locate here in Massachusetts and don't go to other locations. I grew up in Sharon, and the fun fact is I live at 230 School Street, so I have the best location for the Walpole fireworks. Right overhead.
Agreed. I'm Doug Shea. I've been on the committee like Mark since 2018, and like Denny, I've been here for about 40 years. I work in capital finance and contract management. I've got 3 kids in the school system at Elm and Johnson. In addition to finance committee, I'm an RTM. I'm on the recreation committee, and this year I tried the bylaw review committee. So we'll be presenting to you next week. So that's me.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Rogers. I've lived in Walpole about 11 years now. I have 2 kids in Walpole Public Schools. I have a blended family, so my other 2 live in Holliston. They go to Holliston Public Schools. My background's in special education and in real estate. And this is my first year on Finance Committee, so I'm excited to learn.
Hi, everybody. I'm Scott Wassel. I've been in Walpole for 24 years since I moved back. I actually grew up in Walpole. I'm a retired lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps. I have 4 kids that went through the Walpole Public Schools. My youngest just graduated from college, so I am thankfully done with paying for that. And I am kind of getting promoted, I guess, from the Capital Budget Committee onto the Finance Committee this year. So,
should I do one?
Sure.
Jim Johnson, Town Administrator, been here 18 years. Feels like It's gone by like that. I just came from coaching football, so all the fun stuff. I love this time of year, so hand it off to you.
Hi, everyone. Audrey Grace, she, her, and I've lived in Walpole for 10 years. We just had our 10-year anniversary of our house. But I grew up right next door in Westwood, and actually Holliston are our rivals, so it's nice to know. I've been RTM since 2017, and I am on the Walpole Housing Partnership as well. I've done that for 4 years. I am an attorney by training, and I'm in higher ed right now. In higher education as the Vice President for Inclusive Excellence at Regis College. But I've done municipal regulatory and administrative law in the past, mostly in the Maine judicial system. I have 2 kids in the public school system, and I'm a lifetime Girl Scout. And now this year, an assistant troop leader for Daisy Troop. Aw, nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Lisa Vanderlinden. I've been in town, like Mark, since 1998, and been on the committee, I think, like Mark, since 2018. I have a small business in town, a gardening business. My 4 kids either went through the Walpole schools or 2 are still in high school. One just got her driver's permit today, big day for the Vanderlinden family. I've been on a couple other committees in town, and Destination Downtown is one, and I'm also on the 300th Anniversary Celebration Committee, so please funnel me all your ideas for how we can have a really great 2024 is the 300th anniversary for Walpole.
Hi, everyone. I'm Leanne Lutzen. I just joined the committee. I have lived in Walpole for 32 years, maybe 33 years. Graduated Walpole High School and left for college for a little bit, and I came back. I have 3 young children, not in the school system yet, so just starting preschool, but they'll be getting there soon. So during the day, I am the director of finance at Ursuline in Dedham. So I've spent my background in public accounting, nonprofit management, higher ed, and then I made the switch to independent schools. So that's it.
Steve Hendricks, I've been on the committee, this will be my 3rd year now, started in 2020, 19, whatever it was. I guess 1998 was a great year to move to Walpole, because that's when I also moved to Walpole, so it's a great town. My 3 kids have all gone through the school. My youngest is a junior in high school. And I've worked at a PNC insurance company in the finance department for, I'd say, about 26, 27 years now, so.
I guess it's me.
Yeah.
I'm Jean Kenny, and I've lived in Walpole for 37 years. I have 3 grown children who have gone through the Walpole Public Schools, and I went through them myself. Just retired after 28 years as an educator in Walpole. I retired about 4 years ago as the assistant superintendent, and I now currently work part-time for the Education Cooperative as the Director of Professional Learning and Leadership. And I'm an RTM as well, and also the president at this point of the Walpole Media Corporation. This is my 2nd year on the Finance Committee.
Hi, I'm Josette Burke. This is the beginning of my 13th year on Finance Committee. I've been clerk. I'm also the chairman of the Council of Age and Board of Directors. At the moment, for the last couple of years, I've been the liaison between finance and capital budget. I also work at the polls. I have been married for 58 years. We have 4 grown children. We have 7 grandchildren and 3 great-grandsons. Other than that, we've got a great group here. Everybody's got some really amazing things to contribute, so we've got a good board.
Mark. Right.
And
Kathleen and Brad.
Kathleen?
I'm Kathleen Grulich. I was born in Walpole and a graduate of Walpole High School. We moved back to raise our family, and we had 4 children go through Walpole High School, Walpole Public Schools, and my baby just started college today. And I've been on the Finance Committee since 2018, I think, if that's what the paper says. And I'm also an RTM. I work in a interior design firm in Norwood.
Hi, everyone. Brian Bain here. Grew up in Walpole, went to Walpole Public Schools, moved away a little bit after college, moved back to Walpole in 2010. My daughter graduated Walpole Public Schools in 2021. I'm a PGA golf professional and work for the PGA of America doing consulting, and my background's in finance.
Actually, before we go any further, I got a reminder that Walpole Media does tape all of our meetings, and actually tonight's meeting is live because there's no conflicts with other boards. So please keep our comments to the point because it is going out over Walpole Cable. First item on the agenda is to elect a new chair. I am not seeking re-election to the chair for this year. Based on our schedules, we have 2 meetings on Thursday nights, and our public hearing is Thursday nights, and from now through Thanksgiving, I have conflicts on almost every single Thursday night that's related to scouts. I am the acting scoutmaster of a troop in Foxborough until my son gets back up on his feet to be able to take back his job. He's working into it. He's guaranteeing me at least 1 meeting a month that he can make, but he's not sure which ones yet. So that's why I'm not seeking to be reappointed as our chair. At this time, I'll entertain any nominations for chair.
Motion for Denny Crowley as chair.
Okay, motion.
Second.
Seconded by Josette. Okay. We'll need to do a roll call because we have Zoom. Okay, I say yes. Denny?
Yes.
Okay, Josette?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Adrian?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Audrey?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Leanne?
Oh, sorry, yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay. Jean?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
And Larry?
Yes.
All righty. 15-0-0. Congratulations, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Perfect.
So that leaves a vice chair. Do we have nominees for the vice chair?
I'd nominate Doug for vice chair.
I'll second that.
And any other nominees? Seeing none, we'll go through the roll call. Mark?
Yes.
I'll say yes, it's me. Josette?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Adrian?
Adrian, yes.
Sorry. Scott?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Audrey?
Yes.
The A's. Steve?
Yes.
Leanne?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Doug?
Abstain.
Mark? Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Larry?
Yes.
Excellent. So
14-0-1.
14-0-1. Probably should have abstained on myself.
Welcome.
Now we need a clerk.
I'd like to nominate Josette Burke.
I think it's a wonderful idea. Does anyone want to second that?
I'll second that.
And does anyone else want to make any other nominations?
Okay.
Seeing none, we'll go through. Mark?
Yes.
I will say yes. Josette?
Abstain.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Adrian?
Yes.
I gotta get in the right. Scott?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Audrey?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Leanne?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Larry?
Yes. Yes.
That's 14-0-1. Now, for the school building committee?
Right. That position was formerly held by Susan Lawson, and last year she was replaced by Ally Hamilton, who is now on the select board. So we need to fill that vacancy. And I've nominated Jean Kenny to take that spot. She's very familiar with the school system and other things that the school has done in regards to building and operations, so I think she'd make an awesome candidate.
Excellent.
Second?
Scott seconded.
Scott, thank you. Anyone, other nominations? Perfect. We'll go through. Mark?
Yes.
I will say yes. Josette?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Adrian?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Audrey?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Leanne?
Yes.
Jean?
I'll abstain.
Doug?
Yes.
Mark? Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
And Larry?
Yes.
Wonderful. 1501. And then we need someone for the Capital Budget Committee, which has been Josette.
Yeah, and actually, Josette's offered to carry through this term since their first meeting is this Wednesday, or second
Week.
meeting?
No, third meeting.
Third meeting, okay. So she's already actively involved in this cycle, but she wants to step down from the capital budget after town meeting this fall. So we'd like to get a person on record that can take over, so when capital budget starts meeting late February, early March, they're up and running and they're not searching for a name. Anybody interested?
Can I ask a question? Josette, how often do they meet? Or how often do you have to go?
This time, it's been Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of this week, so it's like 5 meetings this time, and it's at...
Mostly August. so.
Yes, it's been mostly August, and it's at usually 6 o'clock. We had one 7 o'clock at the beginning of the year. Once you start going into that particular budget, the meetings usually start at 6, Patrick? And they will be running longer because there'll be more meat to the budget to be discussed. So I've pretty much got it covered till the end of this week. And I've been doing it since Carol Lane stepped back, which has been a while. And if somebody else would like to take it over,
I'll
that
do
would
it.
be great.
Give it a shot.
All right, I nominate Larry.
Wonderful. Do we
Great,
have a second
Larry.
for that?
Second.
Okay.
Perfect.
Did you second it, Scott?
Doug did.
Okay.
Mark?
Yes.
I will say yes. Josette?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Adrian?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Audrey?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Leanne?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Larry? Perfect, 1401. That covers all of our requirements for the staffing, correct?
Yep.
So then we get on to Article 2.
Sure.
Jim, do you want to start us with Article 2 and give us an
Yeah, sure.
overview?
Usually I start with a brief overview of the warrant. This is probably one of the shortest warrants I've had to work with, either as the town administrator or the assistant town administrator ever in my tenure in Walpole. Most of it's relating to capital, as you can see, with all of these different articles. There are a few housekeeping things here, so I'll start off with Article 2 and kind of feed into it. So Article 2 is the in-year budget adjustment article. It's a standard article. It's on there every year. Sometimes it's very small, sometimes it's larger. I would say this one is about in the middle. Last year, we had an adjustment, I think it was a rather large adjustment. The last town meeting in the spring, we had an adjustment of $470,000 or $90,000 for an in-year budget adjustment. So this is about in the middle. We're looking for some additional funds in legal. That's specifically relating to some of the land use boards have, if you've been following anything in town, we have a considerable amount of 40B projects ongoing here in Walpole. We're in safe harbor. The DHCD has determined that we're no longer in safe harbor. We've been appealing that, so that's been pretty costly in those appeals. Planning board's been very busy. There's a couple of suits outstanding at the court level there. We've also taken on some additional, the levies, the tax taking out of there. Prior to this year, we were able to pay that out of the liens that we put on a property if we take it in tax taking. However, the auditors have advised us within the last year or two that we can no longer do that. So we've taken on a little bit more money there. And the assessors have asked for an additional $50,000 up to $50,000 they've released in the overlay to cover a very large suit with some of the larger taxpayers in town, and I think Jack could probably get into that if you'd like some more details. Another item on there is $30,000 for the town clerk salary line. I'm requesting some additional funds for the clerk salary, which has been amended per the vote of the Board of Selectmen back just before the end of the fiscal year, back in June. They've adjusted her contract. And some additional funds needed for the election workers, which we hadn't budgeted for because we didn't know if the state was going to make that permanent, which it seems as though it's going to be now. So all in, it's about $30,000 there. So we're looking for $22,000 for the clerk's salary and $7,200 for the miscellaneous salary for the election workers. Next up is the finance department. We're looking for an additional $23,500 there. The assistant town clerk left after the budget had been set. We did a long job advertisement. We were able to recruit someone who was a previous auditor for 2 years as the acting in Brockton. However, it cost us a little bit more than what we had budgeted for. So I'm looking for an adjustment of $23,500 there. Next up is $20,000 for the Board of Assessors line. Again, this is a result of some vacancies that have come up. 2 of the longest serving employees in town recently retired within the last 6 months or so. We thought we had that department pretty much set. However, we had the 3rd person. She also gave her notice right before the end of the fiscal year. So we have an opportunity here to create the position of deputy assessor. This lines up with some of the succession planning that we've had in place for some of the other departments. It's essentially, we've had to sit down, negotiate with the union because all 3 of the other positions in that department are part of the ASME union. We've come to an agreement where they'll basically say, okay, we understand you're going to do business. We understand you have to have a succession plan in place. We'll allow this position not to be filled for a few years and see where it goes. Honestly, all the 6 union contracts are up at the end of this fiscal year. So we will be negotiating that, but they're looking for an additional $20,000 there for the deputy assessor position. And last item here, which is probably no surprise to you, gas and diesel. I'm looking to put it in the vehicle maintenance expense line. I know the finance director may look to change that a little bit, but I'm looking for an additional $60,000 there, and there's a good reason behind that one. When we were setting the budget, I went back and looked at, Jody and I both did, the averages of all the different lines over the years. You know, highway, oh, you only spent $13,500, but you're asking for $16,000. We cut it down to the average of the last 3 years. Never would I think we're paying, you know, now it's $4 a gallon, but at the peak we were paying +5. So look to adjust something there. The reason I'd like to see it in the vehicle maintenance line, and Jody, we haven't really talked about this, but is I'm just looking for an adjustment so I can, that's more of like an emergency if they need to dip into it. If highway starts to run out, Jody can dip into it there. But her and I haven't really talked about it in that much detail. Jody, do you have anything to add, really, or no?
No,
Yeah,
I think you've said
Yeah.
that.
So those are the few adjustments we're looking to make. Denny, would you like me to kind of keep going, then we can jump back, or do you want
No, I
to
think
take questions on the articles?
Probably good. Let's start with 2.
Sure.
That way people can ask questions. Any questions?
Question about the new assistant town accountant.
Sure.
We just did that, was it last year? And so, do we have to adjust the salary schedule too? It looked like that was approved at a lower value. Is that something that also has to happen, the schedule?
We will have to, no, for the deputy assessor, we're going to have to add that position on the salary schedule.
The assistant town accountant.
The assistant town accountant, that's already on the salary schedule.
I thought it was a new thing, okay.
Yeah.
On the accountant, you mentioned recruiting. How do you recruit for that position or any position?
Well,
Is there
To be
recruiters
quite
or
honest-
you?
Oh, there are recruiters. We didn't go ahead and hire one. Jody, through her networking through the finance, what is that called? MMA.
Yes, municipal.
Yeah. So basically through the Mass Municipal, they're different groups. We did put a post out there. We're looking for an assistant town accountant. We found some people, but they had 0 municipal accounting experience. And this all comes back to the thought of succession planning. We were made aware of a person who had a position in Brockton for a very long term, 10 plus years, and it just wasn't working out. Made changes in mayors, and I can totally understand that. We were able to successfully recruit this person to come over to Walpole. And she has all the experience with working with Munis, doing everything that Jody needs her to do it week in and week out, so it just kind of lined up and worked out.
Thank you.
My question about the legal fees, can you tell me again what that breakdown was and why they are?
So they're not that high yet. I'm expecting them to come in higher than in some rates. The last few months of the fiscal year, we averaged close to 25,000 in legal bills just for KP Law alone. We have two different counsels. We have Labor Counsel, which is Kevin Feely and Dan Brown, who assist us on mostly negotiations and in-house personnel issues we may have. And then the larger cases, KP Law handles that. That could be anything from a problem we're having, an ongoing problem we're having with some sewer and water fees, to anything related to up near me. They're building a subdivision on Lincoln Road, and they're dealing with an appeal that the planning board decided to shoot down. But they're also handling the tax title for us, and I didn't get into that too much, but basically, we used to be able, 2-3 years ago, to tack on, if we take Jim Johnson's house via tax taking, and we spend $5,000 in legal fees, we used to be able just to tack that on. That's no longer allowed right now. So we did budget, I think it was 10,000-15,000 for that, but we've been a bit more aggressive lately. With the change in the finance team, we've gone after a few that just lingered out there since the 90s. I can think of a couple of them. So we're trying to be too aggressive, but we're also trying to be sympathetic to people's situation there. So those are just a couple. I can get you a whole list if you'd like, but in the 40Bs aren't killing us, but they are taking up a considerable amount of time. Right now, we have the Summer Street project, which has been settled for over a year. They've received their comprehensive permit. They haven't done any building. We received a determination back in May or April that the DHCD has said you're no longer in safe harbor because you have not issued one building permit for this. We haven't issued a building permit because we haven't been asked to issue a building permit. So there's multiple projects that have been on the table. Darwin, Pinnacle come to mind. The one on Pleasant Street right next to the Armory, right before the Norwood line, that's on the table now. So those are three. I might be missing one. But those have all come forward. The zoning board's had to make a decision that, yes, we are invoking our safe harbor, and then the DHCD has X amount of time to make a decision, but they've already told us, we believe, you've expired it, but we're still allowed to invoke it at this point. So we expected we'd be in safe harbor for 2 years. I didn't expect the developer on Summer Street to already have pulled one building permit on that project, which is frustrating.
Other questions?
I have some-
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Some,
Benny,
my questions are in the town, the accountant salaries. So we had estimated 72, and we're paying,
We didn't estimate. That was a
What's that?
set number. That number was set in stone. Person resigned from the position, went to another community.
right, but in order to replace it, it's roughly a 40% increase.
Yes.
And then with the town accountant, with the new contract that the selectmen have agreed to,
Clerk, right?
the 23,000, so that's gonna be, I guess my question is, are like town management positions seeing this kind of astronomical
Yes.
percentage increases across the board, so that, we've had ranges saying they're gonna get X amount per year, like the contracts, but now we're gonna be seeing these big jumps?
So the short answer is yes. We are seeing it, not only in Walpole, but in all communities. These important department head positions are going for way more than we really expected. I'll give you an example. The finance director in Norwood, I thought we were in good shape, and Jody knows where we stand now. They just hired a finance director within the last year or so at about $174,000 a year, which is probably $40,000-$50,000 more than what we're currently paying. That's one position. We did do a salary survey, and where they're actually coming in to present it to the select board sometime this fall. We did a salary survey and analysis of where we stand with everything, and quite honestly, we're generally in the middle to the low end at this point. We try to, with these important positions, we gotta pay people to come here, and retain them. Specifically, the town clerk, my concern with the town clerk is, I reached out to our former town clerk when Liz said, she's thinking of retiring. And I asked her, I said, what are you currently getting paid and where are you at? She's about what we're paying right now, what I'm asking for at this point, about 117, 118. And the salary survey proved to me that that's about what the going rate, about 110 to 117, 118 is what a town clerk the size of Walpole gets paid. We're paying 94. And as far as the assistant accountant position, she left at 72, 74,000 for another position in a neighboring community. I think it was more pay. And we had to pay to get this person to come over. And I look at it from, if you want me to come to Walpole, give me some incentive, 10 or 20% more, whatever the number is, to get good. We don't generally have people leave here, but when they do, we know we'll have to pay.
Yeah, my question isn't so much a concern with these two things here. I'm just wondering, like, in general, we have this big staff that supports Walpole. We've made estimates, for future budgets, and now is the labor market just so drastically changing that, school teachers are tough to get, other school staff, that cities and towns are finding that their budgets for these types of positions, we're all in competition, and they're greatly increasing. That's all. I'm
That's a fair
just trying to
statement,
get an
yeah.
idea of what's going on. Okay.
Jody?
I'm Jody Cuneo, the finance director, town accountant, for those who don't know me. I just wanted to add, in response to Mark, in addition to Jim, is we just went for a borrowing, and one of the things that Standard & Poor's looks at when they're doing a rating is the management team. And they like to see the longevity, they like to see the experience, they want to know what our succession plans are. So these types of things, trying to get, good, strong, experienced people, it really makes a difference in that respect.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? I just have a
De-
question
Denny, I have
regarding
one.
the assessor's department. So you indicated 2 had retired, 1 has also, so that's 3 that are retiring.
Yes, so there's 4 positions in that department. The assessor, the town appraiser, which is Dennis Fliss, and then 3 clerical union people who are part of the ASME union. We've successfully negotiated with them. We'd like to go forward with this deputy assessor position, knowing that it may take some of the work away from collective bargaining agreement. So we're going to go forward with 2 union people in that department and 1 non-union person at the department.
that
They've
was
agreed
mine.
basically to hit the pause button for a few years. We understand that, as people get older, we like to have succession plan. I'd rather have a department head come to me and say, I'm planning to retire in 2 to 4 years, so we can plan accordingly, because quite honestly, Dennis, I think, has been here since 1996 or 95. He jokes with me, 97 is when I graduated high school. He said, you were a baby when I was here. So we're just more or less trying to plan.
So it's the
So it would
3
take it down.
positions, but one of them is more administrative.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Brian?
Thanks, Denny. Through you, Jim, on the gas diesel,
Can we
does
turn
the
the volume
town,
up?
does the town have contracts? Is that an RFP process?
Brian, hold on 1 second. The volume was low on here for you. We good?
Try it again. Go ahead.
Good, Brian.
Through you, Denny, to Jim, with the gas and diesel, does the town have contracts? Is that an RFP process? How does that work?
So we purchased our gasoline off the state bid list. No, sorry, not off the state bid list. We have an agreement through, what's the name of that credit card we use? Global. No, that's for the diesel. So we have a credit card that we've purchased through the state. And basically mine has the state seal on it, and we get, what, is it 10 or 15 cents off of that? 10 to 15 cents off the gasoline wherever we buy it. So we ask all the departments to go to the lowest price vendor in town whenever possible. That's for the gasoline, because we don't own our own gasoline tanks. For the diesel, we do purchase it through competitive bid pricing with Norfolk actually is the lead bidder on that one, I believe. And we purchase it every few years through Global. Our contract's currently with Global right now. So we're getting, for the diesel, we're getting the best value possible. For the gas, because we don't have gas tanks, and the town years ago made the decision not to go forward with gas tanks. There was talk about doing a gas tank. We did the fire station. It just couldn't fit on the site there. We can't do it down at the DPW because it's in area 1 of our wells. So we've never pursued a gasoline, our own gasoline tanks.
Perfect, thank you.
Go ahead. Back to the deputy assessor. So we're creating the position for the salary schedule going forward, but are we looking at making this a permanent position, or is this a training position with the intention that they would become the head assessor and then we would go back to the old agreement?
Because I'm in collective bargaining going into a year, we are, let's say TBD.
Okay.
If there's a way to save money, I know the assessors will work with me to ensure that we do so. Okay.
It's on the table.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And just for new members, when you're going into collective bargaining, we tried to be.
Pretty conservative.
Yes, in our
Honestly,
statements.
one of the guys that I coach with is a Needham police officer, and he just told me Needham just settled their police contract for 20% over 3 years, which is a very large number. I know our police officers and our firefighters are aware of that contract because both of the heads of those unions have mentioned it to me. I think that might be, I'm hoping that's an outside anomaly. We've never heard of 20%. I've talked to our labor council. We're conducting some surveys through the HR department as to what other towns are giving out. We survey about 19 different communities, what their COLAs are gonna be. So when we go into collective bargaining with, again, all 6 of our union contracts on the town side expire at the end of this fiscal year. We know what all the surrounding communities are getting, but that Needham one blew my mind when I heard 20%, so, yeah.
So just want to make sure, try to think through of things that most of us have gotten used to over the years hearing. So if there's, feel free to ask if you don't know something, you're not sure what it means. The only reason we all learned it was because we heard it here too, most of the same stuff, so.
And just to
Wanna make sure
piggyback back on
feels
that,
comfortable.
so those contracts, whenever they come up for the newer people, have to come before your board for review and consideration. Unlike the school department, we have to get it approved through town meeting. The school department, through the school committee, does not have to go through town meeting. That's a mass general law. But we have to present it to you. We present the changes and the dollar value associated with year 1. So if DPW, the total value cost of year 1 was $20,000, we present that to you. We also present the changes that may be made.
So I do have on the revenue source, 168,500 from new taxation and 50,000 from the overlay account. You know, what is the new growth? Is that, how did that money come about?
Jack, feel free to jump in if I get anything wrong. So new growth, each year we estimate new growth to be, generally, before this year, it was always about $650,000. I think when I started out as a TA, it was maybe 500. This year, the select board, the school committee, and some finance committee members met and asked me to don't be as conservative when estimating your new growth numbers because I don't have them in front of me, but they've come in, I think last year was 1.7, 1.5. Yeah, 1.7, 1.5, and I can get you the historical information. And the argument is, well, why are you only estimating at 650 if it's coming in at $1.5 million? That was a nice hot streak we were on with the new buildings downtown and the development of the old Walpole Woodworkers. That was coming in, but that project, those 2 projects downtown have finished. Woodworkers are on their last building, and we haven't seen any significant building. Like pre-COVID, we were on a really good streak right there. It's slowed down a bit on these larger projects. One, because Summer Street hasn't pulled their permits yet. Some of these 40B projects that are pending with the ZBA haven't been permitted. There's another potential friendly 40B project coming that they're actually presenting it to the select board at one of their upcoming meetings in Walpole Center. So I'm hopeful that will come back around again, but our new growth was estimated at 950 for this year. I spoke to Dennis. He said, I expect it to be in the $1.2, $1.1 million range. And I said, well, can I cover these positions with the 168,500? He was comfortable with that number there. And the remaining 50,000 was, if it hasn't been already released from the assessors, he's advised me that it's likely going to be released. They want to make sure that they cover any challenges they may have to the taxes that are levied, right? Yeah.
It's extremely important that we make sure that we have sufficient funds in the overlay to cover any kind of abatement request at all. Because if we don't cover it, it has to come back and come out of the budget. So almost rule number one for an assessor is make sure that you have enough in your overlay account to cover any possible abatement. And once we feel comfortable with that, then we start to release the money back into the general fund.
Just please refresh our memory of what an overlay account is.
The overlay account is what we pay back to the taxpayers if there's an abatement request or exemption. So if someone gets a veteran's exemption or an elderly exemption, or we've overassessed their property and money has to be returned to them, it comes out of the overlay account. That's the only.
How did the money get into the overlay account?
It gets appropriated as part of the,
General budget setting process, yeah.
Yeah,
it's not voted on.
I'm just making sure we got it for everyone.
yeah, because actually in the budget process, you'll see, it doesn't actually come through as a line item, but on the overall review, it's like, we're putting in 600,000, we're taking out 550, but there's always a number there from the prior year that's carrying forward. So even though it looks like it's a zero wash on this year's budget, there's money from prior years still sitting in there. So, but it always shows up as almost a direct in and out on the budget when we do it.
Any other questions on Article 2? All right.
On the gas, what did we budget and how much has been expended to date approximately?
I could give you a breakout, because it's broken out into every single department. Jody did do an analysis, and you gave me, you want to jump in a little bit? You gave me 3 different scenarios. And I took the middle scenario, because she looked at, everything from highway to police to fire.
So percentage-wise, we've spent 70% of it, and that's why we think, I get it, we're not even halfway through.
No, we haven't spent 70%.
No.
You're only 8 weeks in.
Right,
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah.
gas is, well, you budgeted
Yeah.
$2 a gallon.
true, yeah.
Now it's $4 a gallon.
So Larry, I don't mind sharing that analysis, that spreadsheet Jody put together. I took the middle column because
Okay.
the other ones seemed like outliers to me, but I can get you the details on it.
That's fine, I'm good. On the assessor position, is 3 gonna become 2, right?
So you're gonna
clear.
take 3 union positions, we're taking it down to 2 union positions,
Right.
then 1 non-union position.
That was monies from that third position is gonna be reallocated to this
New position.
new position.
Yeah.
And you mentioned too, is this gonna be sunsetted in a sense, this position, or that's to be
It's going to
determined?
become part of collective bargaining.
As part of the short-term agreement, it does have a sunset in it, but knowing that I am going into collective bargaining, and if I wanted to do a long-term solution, I'd have to negotiate it out with them. Yeah.
Okay. On the town clerk, let me back up. On the assessor, is that a contract? Do you do
No,
a contract with that?
that's gonna go in the salary schedule.
Okay. And on the town clerk, I'm guessing it's a contract?
There is a contract. So the contract was signed back in 2020, good through June of 2023. This amendment, which is what the board had signed back in May, June timeframe, calls for the annual salary to increase from about $94,000 to $117,000. It covers the accrued unused sick time up to $8,500. Liz has agreed to provide any training, transitional, and technical assistance to the next person chosen as the town clerk as needed, with the understanding that the training assistance shall be available both prior to and after her retirement. And all the other conditions of the prior agreement remain in effect.
Can that be shared with the
Sure.
committee?
Yeah.
Great. And last question, are there stipends also that the clerk receives currently?
Not as specifically outlined in this agreement. I think you do receive a small stipend for your certification. $700.
Okay.
So just listing that there's some additional information coming, do we want to vote on Article 2 tonight?
No,
Personally, I'd like to see the contract, but that's me.
I agree with you.
I move that we table Article 2 for a future date.
Just
Did
for
we get all the
for
information?
discussion. I'll get you a copy of the amendment, and I'd like to give you the gas information too, the breakdown. Yeah.
Okay, that'd be great, but I'm just trying to.
No, I'd like to get it all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've got a motion, we We have a second?
We don't have a
Well, we don't
motion.
have no motion. We don't have the motion.
No, we
Okay,
don't have a
sorry.
motion, so you don't have to.
Sorry, I
worry
gotta
about
get,
it.
remember all these things. It's easy when I was just asking for motions. All right, good.
I'll provide that information.
All right, perfect. Want to move on to Article 3?
Can I ask a question on the town clerk? Hypothetically, would you be hiring within, or would you be going out?
I don't know.
Is that too early to ask?
I don't know, that's the truth.
Okay.
Yeah, So Article 3 is the OPEB appropriation. New members, we do OPEB the last few years in both the spring and the fall town meeting. The spring, it's generally part of the budget. It's basically towards the bottom near assessment and fringe benefits. The last few years, we've done 500,000. During COVID, I think we might have knocked it down to 100. There's a breakdown in the back for you. So this is the fall appropriation via free cash. I don't think there was too many of you on the committee back in September of 2018, but at the time, the Finance Committee, School Committee, and Select Board got together and adopted, we didn't call it a policy because I wanted to be able to change it. I didn't know if times were gonna be good or bad. We called it a plan at the time, which is basically said, we'll set aside the first 2.5% of the first 2 million of certified free cash to OPEB. Anything above and beyond that, we said we'll do 7.5%. So we've been sticking to that pretty much. If we stick to the policy, we've been sticking to it or going above it. This proposal goes above it. If we stuck to the policy, I believe it was 7,500, 707,500, but I think
Is
that's,
this basically funds to shore up unfunded pension liabilities?
yes, yeah.
Unfunded medical
Health
retirees.
insurance.
Health insurance and dental for retirees.
Pension is separate from,
Pension's separate.
that's through Norfolk County. Yep. So this gets us to 850. I gave you, the current balance in the fund is about $7.7 million. And the total unfunded liability during our last actuarial audit was 51 million. And I can tell you that we're up for another actuarial audit this fall. Yeah, we've already started on that one.
And with this, we're currently funding retirees' health benefits ongoing. This is where we're going down. This is to create it so that eventually, over time, when this gets fully there, we would stop funding it out of the operating budget, and it would all be funded out of
Yeah, and at the
OPEB,
time, back in
theory.
when we first adopted this plan back in 18, the concern was, well, how are we ever going to get there by only doing $1 million or 1.5? Then it wasn't even that much. And we agreed that basically our unfunded liability through Norfolk County is set to expire in 2029, right? 2029, yeah. We put about $5 million towards the county each, as part of our budget cycle. Each year it goes up 7.5%. And we take that remaining money, move it down to the OPEB line and fund it more aggressively. We had a whole chart developed. I can share it with some of the newer members. I think I've given it to some people in the past, but that's kind of the game plan with OPEB.
And actually, that pension number was, most of it was the unfunded catch-up at around 3.8 to 4 million a year. The rest of it was the current year funding that was going in. So there's a sizable number once we get out of that funding the prior deficit, that'll be able to flip.
Excellent. Any questions on Article? Yep.
How's the Norfolk County pension? Are they?
Lisa
Doing what
actually
they
has a
said
seat
they'd
at the
do?
table, so. On their board.
Yes.
Well, what do you mean, how is it? We're funding, we're obviously funding through all the assessments. We just had a meeting with all the town managers in June. They're all well aware of our process and our funding schedule and how we fund it. There's been some talk about changing some things, and I think the next time we talk with town managers, I think, they're always.
So they had us at basically fully funded in 2029?
Yeah.
So they're still on target to hit
Yes,
that?
they're on target. The actuary was there, he spoke and he explained how we're on target and how we're investing.
Okay, and then just with these amounts here, when it says the OPEB fund is 7.7 million, unfunded liability 51.1, does that mean the total liability is 58? Do I add the 7?
No.
yeah, it's down to like, I remember him saying around 43 or 44.
And the date on when we're supposed to be at the 51 million is?
There's no date.
There's no date,
Yeah, some
okay.
towns, I think, there's some
like
towns that
overall.
aren't contributing at all to their OPEB, so.
They think about 30 years, when you think about investing, they say, well, it's a 30-year investment, so you kind of think, just like, you know, we're thinking 30 years for OPEB. That's how
Okay.
we look at it.
In the Standard & Poor's rating, it says on page 5, about halfway down, that Walpole participates in the following plans. Norfolk County is funded at 70.2%, with a net pension liability of $34 million, 0.7. And it mentions in that paragraph right below those 3 bullet points, the town contribution increased by 6.6% per year. And I guess if I do that, we're gonna be funded by 2029, that's approximately 50% increase between now and 2029. And at that point, stop?
That's what they've,
That's the plan.
That's the plan, yeah.
That'd be nice.
A nice way to put it, Larry. That's the plan.
I hope the market cooperates. And on the OPEB, while I have my time, 850, we put in, you mentioned, I think, 500 approximately in the budget?
500 back in the
So
spring.
about 1.3, and my quick math was based on the liability, that will take about 37 years at that pace. Again, I've heard me before, to me, this is a mortgage we've ignored for a long time. We should be much more aggressive. It's just, I don't think it's gonna, I mean, the baby boomers, everybody's retiring. We talking about it tonight. I just think we, as much as we don't want to, I think we have to make choices and prioritize this. This mortgage should have been, again, a long time ago, and 37 years to pay this off seems like a.
Well, the reality, Larry, is the baby boomers are gonna get paid out of the operating budget.
They still are, yeah.
It's the generation afterwards that's gonna get paid out of OPEB.
We hope.
And by then, we got a, different story for the world.
And what did we do last fall? We did 850?
So I actually went back and looked, when did we actually start
I
funding
think you had a
this?
list somewhere.
So we started funding it back in 2011, and I remember at the time as the assistant, I'm thinking, OPEC. I don't know, I always call it OPEC, like, I didn't understand what it was. And it was
For oil
never,
and gas.
it would come up during some of our GASB, Artie was the accountant back then, I'm like, this isn't gonna matter ever, and it does matter. And initially, as part of our questioning by these Standard & Poor's here, they ask us, where are you at with this? Are you adhering to the plan? Like, they wanna see the plan. And, so we started in 11, we've built it from 0 in 11 to 7.7 million. We've gotten more aggressive over the last few years. I can tell you I had to go back and check, because fall of 19, we were 292, fall of 20, we kicked in 250, and there's a gap there between fall of 20 and fall of 21. That was because we didn't fund it one year in the spring. That was the COVID.
Yeah, we deferred the fall to the spring to make sure we could.
So the last three, then last fall, we kicked in 716, and in the spring, we did 500, and this year, I'm proposing 850, but again, that's up to you guys, this committee, if you'd like to change that, but that's where we're at.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, so when you're talking about all the accounting jargon of what's required, what's not required, basically they're saying, if you were to close your doors today, you would owe $51 million to pay all your employees' benefits for the time requirement going forward, and you would need $51 million to do that. So right now, we're not in default, because we're paying all the current policies that are due on everybody, the current employees and the retirees. And what we're doing now is we're banking money aside for the rainy day when our current operating budget can't afford to pay the retirees' portion. And we're trying to protect ourselves from having to cut other budgets. So the more we put aside now protects us for 1, 2, 3, or 4 years, maybe 10 years worth of contributions to health benefits that we don't have to go to the operating budget for. So it's not like we have to have $51 million set aside forever. As long as you know you have a window of opportunity, you don't have to take the current retirees and put them in your operating budget. You will have this money set aside to tide yourself over.
Is it untouchable? In other words, you can't touch it until you hit the metric?
We can only touch it for one reason. I believe that one reason is to pay the health benefits,
For
right?
retirees.
For the retirees, yeah.
Okay, if you had to.
Yeah.
If we had to.
Okay, thank you.
That's another thing we've kicked around in the past. Do you want to change the retirees' contribution? No one has wanted to touch that. You know, so we've talked about it, but that kind of was off the table last time this was brought up, so.
But we are getting closer and closer to more of the retirees being 60/40 than 70/30.
Yeah, well, they were 80/20. When I first started here in they made the change in '03. Anyone hired after like January 1st, '03, you went to 70/30. And then we
2 or
made
3
the
years later.
transition years afterwards, maybe 10. I think it was after Michael left to 60/40
Yeah.
for anyone hired after that, so, but it was sometime.
Yeah.
Denny, if you wanna, do you wanna go run through the free cash stuff and then come back maybe another night? Because I don't need a vote, we have plenty of time.
We're good,
Yeah.
if we got plenty of time, that's
Yeah.
probably not a bad move. Everyone okay with that?
I just have one comment. I like the fact that you put the guidelines in. Usually you're going back to
Because
the
Larry always asks
old,
me for a copy of the old memo.
the old decision that was made, and a few of us that were here at the time were aware of it. But it's nice, and for my benefit, and I think for everybody else, that if they have this to look at, it's right there in front of them. And it's not verbalized, it's the exact guidelines that we're going by for everybody's benefit.
And
So,
actually,
thank you.
and actually, it was this committee that pushed that discussion to get the select board and the school committee together to say, we need to address this because we're just like piecemealing it.
That's right.
And Jim put together a lot of research to make that work and come up with a plan that we've been, for the most part, able to adhere to, except during COVID, where we had to slash it off the budget and try to make it up later.
So, Jim, you want to walk through the free cash? And the
Yeah,
numbers?
well, I'll quickly run through stabilization. That leads nicely into the free cash. So the next two articles are stabilization. One is the general stabilization fund, which was established a very long time ago. And that's Article 4, so I'm proposing to put $650 in there. Current balance is $9.6 million. We did put $100,000 back at the Springtown meeting into that line. And the other item here is capital stabilization, which was an account that was established, I believe it was back in the 60s. But town council, last year at this time, said, if you want to pursue this, reestablish the vote at town meeting. So we went back to town meeting, had a zero balance in it. So now it currently has $1.3 million. We just put $1 million in it last fall. We put just about 300 and change into it at the spring. And the proposal here is to run through and put another $650 in there. The thought process behind that account is the school department has talked about doing something up at the high school. They've asked me to table it, and I'll get into that under the free cash for now. But we know we have some type of a large-scale bill coming, probably in the $30 million range for the high school, in some type of an addition. The goal is to do that work without an override, going back to the voters after they just passed a $115 million override for the middle school. School committee, select board seem on board with it. I believe this committee was on board with that plan. So we're trying to set aside more or less, kind of like what we've done with the turf field account. It's grown from just the Turco field account to now a general turf field account, more of a savings account that we're building up year over year, because we, just like the turf fields, we know this bill with the high school is eventually coming, and this will help offset some of the borrowing costs. So that leads me in.
And our goal with stabilization was to get to 10 million, correct?
10 million is part of the, 10%, so.
10% of
Of the
budget.
general stabilization, and then whatever we continue to put aside for the building.
Can you refresh us what stabilization is used for, or what can be used for?
It can, well, capital stabilization can be used on capital improvements. Stabilization, if the bottom falls out in the economy, if, we haven't used it in a very, very long time. I can't remember.
It's basically the rainy day fund.
It is the rainy day fund. It can be used, it used to be 2/3 vote in, 2/3 vote out. They changed the law to go 50% plus one on town meeting to get it in, 2/3 to get it out. So it's difficult to get it out. And that's done on purpose, because you really need to make the case why you need to take it out, quite honestly. the ratings agencies put a lot of weight into what you have in your stabilization, what's your free cash in. And this, they don't like the numbers, the money to come out of there at all, I've learned over the years. So I don't have any plans to, and that kind of leads me to, why am I proposing that we have 3 million, almost $3.1 million carried forward in free cash? So our free cash was certified, so Denny, I'm kind of leewaying into this.
Yeah.
Our free cash was certified at $10.7 million. That's the largest in the history of Walpole. I decided to just attack this head-on and give you a breakdown of where did this all come from. Local receipts came in about $3.6 million higher than we expected. Just about one.
This is on page 6, right?
Page
Right.
6 and 7.
6 and 7.
Yeah, 7 has the detail breakout, yeah.
Got it.
So about $3.6 million higher. 1.2 of that came in the form of 800 in prison mitigation and the sale of a piece of property that we sold at the intersection of Washington Short and Poly. So we didn't budget for those two items. Prison mitigation, the town's been receiving that since about 2005, 2006. It started out at about 500,000. It's grown to 800 and it's leveled off at 800.
And it's going away in 3 years.
It is going away. Yeah, it is going away. We've never budgeted for it, and there's a reason for that. It's not, it's.
Well,
it
there
can
were
be
years
cut.
we didn't know it was
Get it.
coming.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
One-time money.
It has been cut, and 1 year they cut us 2 years in a row, and they doubled up 1 year at $1.6 million. So it's very inconsistent. We can't count on it. It just always falls out to free cash. And the thought process behind prison mitigation, the reason why the Walpole delegation lobbied for it so hard is we provide a considerable amount of police and fire services up there, mostly fire ambulance services, and ambulance runs up there. So years ago, they bought into the idea of, well, since they're not paying any taxes to the town of Walpole for the land, the states agreed to include that as part of the Department of Corrections line, the 800 there. So some other items that have come in, license and permits, that's the building permits for the most part, came in about double what we budgeted. And motor vehicle excise tax came in about 700,000+ what we budgeted. Newer folks on the finance committee, I'm really conservative in my budgeting. I don't want to be in a situation where we overestimate what our local receipts are going to be. Last year, the select board school committee pushed me a little bit to make up for that aggression. I'm concerned. That's one of the reasons why I have carried $3 million and change forward in free cash, because I think we'll meet our local receipts. I'm very confident that we'll meet our local receipt estimates, but you just never know. Again, we've never seen gas as high as it has been. It's dropping off now. But we're proposing to carry about $3 million forward in free cash for those items that we just don't know. What don't I know is the gas. Is gas going to go back up? Most of our buildings are off fuel oil. We only have 3 buildings right now that are still on fuel oil. One of them is one of the fire stations, the small ones. One of them is East Walpole, and I know it's one of the middle schools, and I can't remember which one. But prices are going up for everything, and we just don't know. And I'm also concerned that if local receipts drop off, I can at least have something to dip into to get us through a year or two of bad times. Initially, that $3.1 million was only going to be 1.5. I had some people from the school department approach me, and they initially, as part of my capital budget recommendation, I was proposing $1 to $1.5 million to go towards the high school design. They've asked me to back off on that because they're concerned that that money may be needed in the spring, either to offset some of their costs that they're seeing with the middle school or to put it towards the high school. So I've adhered to that. I said, I'll present this to Finance Committee. We'll hold off on that extra $1.5 million. And if you'd like to come forward with an article at the Springtown meeting, you're more than willing to do so if the Finance Committee agrees with this. So I know I'm kind of hopping all over the place, but all of you have pages 6 and 7 in front of you, I'm assuming. I'll take any questions. Is that okay, Denny? Or?
Go ahead, Mark.
With motor vehicle excise, I know a big jump in that is because new car prices are high, and we get to charge, I believe, is it $25 per thousand based on value? How quickly does that value go down?
So it goes down 5 years, so it's 90% of the value the first year, 60, 40, 25, and 10, and then it stops, so wherever you end up.
That's the bottom line.
5 years is
Okay.
where you end up.
So when you see a jump like this of $700,000, that's a lot of new cars that are gonna go from 90% down to 60%, so you're already gonna see less money next year, and you might not replace all those new car values going forward. Thus, Jim is always conservative, so he doesn't take that hit when all of a sudden the cars start shifting down the line and we don't get them replaced at the top. Yeah. Larry?
And the meals and hotel tax, same thing, I mean, it was just low estimate, and it just came in higher than you expected because of,
Yeah, very much so, especially, the meals were okay during COVID, but the hotel totally dropped off. So that's why we used, prior to COVID, we were at 300,000.
makes sense. License and permits, I mean, that doubled, and is there one big project that drove that?
No, not one specific project. It was, the building department folks are doing a great job getting out there and doing the job, so.
Okay, thank you.
The one line item that is the opposite, I guess, is town fees. That came in, significantly under what you thought. Do you know why?
Town fees,
You're estimating
Oh.
230, and we had 156. I'm just wondering what goes into that.
yeah, so we estimated 230, it came in at 156. I don't remember.
Everything
I'll
else
look it
was
up. Yeah.
over or close, or...
Yeah. Yeah. I'll follow up.
And you had 1.7 million from
So that is an interesting one.
premium holiday, which is probably not gonna happen again.
It will never happen again. They gave us, Maya, who we, back within the last 7 or 8 years, we switched from West Suburban Health Group to Maya, which is a Massachusetts interlocal insurance agency. They have about, I think it's 150, 200 towns or municipalities, which could be a school district or housing authority throughout the state. So we buy our health insurance through them. With COVID, they decided to give us a holiday, not only the town, but also the employees for the whole month of last July. So we saved that, I think we saved about $1.3, $1.5 million just for that holiday alone. So we won't be seeing that one again.
Are the license and permits, those are only building license and permits, or is that also like gun license and?
That is, yeah, that's all, I'm thinking it also covers like our department down for the liquor licenses. It covers anything that Patrick Duchesne's may take in upstairs, Landis, so that's all encompassing, but most of it comes from the building inspections, most of it.
Can you talk, oh, sorry.
Nope, go right ahead.
The reserve fund that you have listed there, is that like a contingency? Is that, because you saved about 460, we didn't need to use it, so is that something that we budget annually?
That is something we budget annually, and each year, that actually falls under the responsibility and authority of the Finance Committee. So each year, we budget 460. The thought process behind that is, what if the school departments come in for some unexpected sped need or whatever, circuit breaker may come in lower, or if something unexpected comes up. Fortunately, we haven't had to touch that for a fair amount of years.
There were years,
Yeah.
we spent a lot of time concerned about special ed expenses, and it was swinging up and down, and someone moves into the town and suddenly it's up a few $100,000, someone leaves, it's down. And it seemed like for several years, they were coming in and not leaving, so it kept going up and unexpected, so this is something that we started to prepare for.
Was this specifically for the school?
It
Oh, this is-
Or
wasn't
is this
specifically,
everybody? Okay,
but
just
it was
worked out.
there generally.
It's an in-budget rainy day fund that we control. Select Board and the Town Administration put their requests together. They come, and it has to get signed off by both us and the Select Board. So those, Jody, you want to chime in?
Oh, no, you can finish.
Okay, sure. Okay. Yeah, so I mean, and like each year, at the end of the year, this board authorizes its officers to make transfers from the reserve fund to close the books. If a bill comes in at the last minute for $5,000, or all of a sudden there's a massive fire and the chief is short on his overtime budget and needs 10 grand, that's what it's there for, so we can close the books. But we've also had times where it's like, yeah, the school department has had so many outplacements for sped that we've had to make a transfer. Or a legal issue comes up and the legal budget is already tapped and it's February, and so we've made transfers. It's the in-budget rainy day fund that doesn't get addressed at fall town meeting or spring town meeting.
So just to give you some perspective, the last, dating back to 20 We spent 11,000 out of there, 0 and 0, so we haven't used it, but it's one of those you need to have.
Just to add to the reserve fund, the key points to that is that it has to be something that was extraordinary and unforeseen. So if, trying to think of an example. Yeah, there we go, so this is that one. If there's a major fire and,
It went
the
on for 2
equipment,
weeks.
yeah, the equipment breaks down or something, we didn't expect that to happen. We can't afford to fund it through the budget. We can come to the finance committee and request that we use those funds to cover that.
So this 3 million balance, does this get added to the current 10.7?
No, so the 10.7, if you go forward with all the capital, which Chairman Fosberg is coming in, I think, later on this week to discuss with you their recommendations. But the capital budget is covered under Article 6, 7, and 8 for the general capital budget, not including water and sewer capital as a separate articles. But, so if they go forward with those and along with the Medicaid reimbursements, and that's one thing. The school department had a really, really good year in Medicaid. They were only budgeting, I think, I made a note of that, they were only budgeting about $490,000 or $450,000. I made it, no, they budgeted $450,000, their Medicaid came in at $665,000. And then in addition to the Medicaid, they had $31,000 in student parking fees and McKinney-Vento Act, $1,600. So that was about $700,000. That's more of a pass-through for the school department in those items. So if, to answer your question, Mark, no, it'll be, if everything goes according to plan, after the end of this town meeting, the free cash balance will be about $3.1 million.
And what was it last year?
Free cash balance, we started at, I have it here.
Started at 9.
9 million, and then you carried forward 500? 500,
to the spring,
yeah. And I can say during COVID, it was a weird number because you picked it, Mark, it was like $912,000 we carried forward one year.
Yeah, we just scaled it back, so we were only doing 400 here and 300 there, and the rest was going over, yeah.
Any other, yeah, go ahead, Doug.
Is there a point where we can have too much free cash and people look at that negatively?
I guess it's your perspective, and I'm not being coy with that answer, but if you look at some of our requests, I think I had $41 million in ARPA requests.
Yeah, it was 40, 45, wasn't it?
It was a very, very large number. And in capital this year, we have 38 million. So some things are obviously getting cut, some things are getting scaled back. There's a lot of things, I could give you the capital list. The schools will be looking to do some work at, the middle schools over the next 10 years. Not the middle schools, the 4 elementary schools. What do we need to put into those schools? I don't know. I think we put a placeholder of maybe $5 million each. Given the way prices are going, and we're seeing it with the middle school, it's up there. We haven't dipped into the contingency fund with that, but one of the reasons the school committee, some of the school committee members are concerned, they're saying, well, we're making some cuts here. What are we really sacrificing? At this point, they're comfortable with those cuts, but I'm off on a tangent, but yes, I don't think we have too much free cash at this point, no.
But the auditors wouldn't come in and say.
No.
I think the auditors like it, right?
Yeah, they're very happy about
Well,
it.
the rating agencies definitely like it.
Yeah, okay, right, yeah, that's right, sorry.
Just, I guess, I personally would like to see more money in OPEB and in the capital stabilization fund. Jim just mentioned 30 million for the schools. I know the rec department has 15 or so just in the pools.
Yeah.
Our liabilities is the wrong word, but our exposure on these capital projects is just as big as OPEB. And our funding is just 1.6 million, something like that. So I'd like to see some of that 3 million, maybe 250, maybe 350 to another account, small amount, redirected from free cash into OPEB and capital stabilization, so we can.
Not opposed to that. One of the reasons, again, the school committee people had asked me, please set aside that 1.5 million if we need it for something. When you have them in, maybe you can have that conversation with them. Because To me, if you carry it forward out of free cash, my thought process was, well, the rating agency won't look negatively on us if we're drawing down on our capital stabilization. We have to, I probably want to ask the question before I said, well, what if I just put this 1.5 over in capital stabilization, and knowing in 2 years from now, we're probably going to be taking it out of there. I guess before you vote on that article, I'd want to know the answer to that question. We could ask our financial advisors if they'd use it against us negatively.
So I'm thinking, let's hold off on any votes tonight.
Yeah, that's fine.
Let's
You only have
just-
one more article
Yeah,
left.
the revolving accounts, let's
Yeah.
just go through it all.
Yeah.
We can think about it and talk, and, because, get some plans together.
When you were talking about the auditors saying we're having too much free cash, it's not the auditors, it's the RTMs and their constituents, the taxpayers, that are gonna say, you increased my taxes by 2.5% plus an override to cover school debt, and now you've got $10 million in your pocket. And the thing there is like, yes, but there are revenue items that we can't rely on every year, and some of them are definitely going away. And we got lucky that some of our costs were significantly refunded to us in the way of health insurance. We didn't have to pay for a month of premiums. Snow and ice, we were fortunate we didn't have to plow 5 times or 6 times and use up all of our budget. And then some of these other ones where you see hundreds of thousands of dollars being turned back is because positions that we wanted to fill didn't get filled. We're still trying to fill those positions this year, which means you're not going to see those lines turned back if we get to where we want to be for staffing in police and fire. You're not going to see 280 turned back on police. You're not going to see 88,000 turned back on fire. And vacancies within DPW, parks, and maintenance, we're trying to get fully staffed. Those aren't going to turn back next year. So you're really looking at a potential of significantly less money being available on a regular basis. And that's the tough sell. You got to sell it to the RTMs who don't watch our meetings and hear the debate and know the process that we go through when planning budgets. So it's like, yes, we need to be conservative because we don't want to have to come back and say, we missed. Now we got to balance the budget. And what do we have for free cash to balance the budget? And now you can't do the capital projects you were hoping to do in the spring because we're trying to balance the budget.
And just to piggyback, and not to pick on the chief, but ideally, we're currently at about 11 per shift. He'd like to be at 16.
Yeah.
Fair statement, chief?
Yeah.
Mark,
Yeah.
you know,
We got to get this.
We've had those discussions for
we've had
years.
it, and
We're trying to trying to get the staffing to 12, and we just can't get the positions all filled.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Kathleen?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in and say, Mark, you're absolutely right, and if I were there, it would be easier to jump in. I think to the outside perspective, it looks like we're taking this money, squirreling it away, where there are fewer controls on how it gets spent. It doesn't need to get voted on in the same way. And so I think we have a job to do in terms of educating. I appreciate the conservatism in your budgeting, Mark, Jim, but I think we need to get the message out somehow that these are kind of one-time savings, and this is how it all fell out, but it could have gone in a completely different direction.
Well, the biggest thing is the 1.7 and
Yeah, and
the holiday.
Yeah, and prison mitigation's going away.
Yeah.
Because the prison's getting closed down. They just haven't scheduled it yet, so, yeah.
so Kathleen, I think maybe the chairman and I could work to come up with a memo to town meeting to explain it a little. I mean,
Yeah, probably a
basically,
very
what
good
I would
idea.
say is, show them, this is page 7, here's the sources.
Yeah.
You know, not hide it, here's the sources. And they
Yeah.
can come out and here's where we're at.
That'd be great, Jim. Thanks.
Ancient history ago, when we were doing the police department, the fire department, the DPW, and the COA building, we were setting aside money, and we were criticized for setting aside the money so we would not have to do an override. So we had 4 buildings in one fiscal period without an override because, like, if you're running a home budget and you have something big coming up, you set aside money. And on a larger scale, that's what Jim and the Finance Committee has been doing very successfully, and we're very fortunate. But no matter what you do, there's going to be somebody that's going to find fault with whatever you do, and all we can do is, we're not micromanaging, Jim, but we definitely appreciate the work that you and your group put in.
Thank you.
I was gonna say, and until we had this capital stabilization, we didn't really have a savings account for capital
No, we don't.
projects, so it was a matter of recycling it through the free cash year over year. Any other questions on this?
Oh, just one other comment through you. The rating from, the general obligation, they referred consistently to making sure, like particularly on page 4, it says the town does a 5-year look back and formulating the budget, tends to budget conservatively as evidenced by a history of balanced budgets and budget to actuals provided to the Board of Selectmen monthly. And basically, the theme is that Walpole is very strong in terms of budget management and planning for the future.
Two people behind me. They do a great job.
Well, all of you.
Yeah.
But I think the town and the RTMs need to see this, or at least have bullet points taken from this, paper that was submitted to us.
Yeah,
We'll get to work.
working in there, yeah.
Wait a minute, what did I volunteer for?
You're there.
Oh, look, fun and games.
So last item on your agenda,
Yeah.
Denny, is the revolving funds. And Doug, feel free to jump in at all. So this was an item that came up as part of the, actually, the bylaw review committee. It also came up, our auditors pointed out to Jody that they'd like some things changed in here. So there are a few changes proposed in here. So first change is the Turco Field Maintenance and Turf Replacement Fund, increasing that spending limit from $508,000 to $1.5 million. So these revolving funds, specifically for the Turco Field, as the funds come in, say youth football or lacrosse, pay the recreation department to use those. Some of that money goes not only to continued turf maintenance, with the sod and the grass seed, but a portion of it does go into this fund here. The proposal here, and last time we had this, we only had one field, one turf field, which was Turco Field. We now have 3, which are the Turco and the two fields at the Route 1A complex. So that's increasing it to there. And I apologize on my end, I missed this, but the bylaw review committee had proposed just leaving it as, Doug, it was the turf maintenance
I
account,
think
right?
it was synthetic field maintenance.
Synthetic
turf
field
fund.
maintenance. So the select board's already signed this, but since you make the main motion, we could if you want to change it now, Doug, or leave it, whatever. I'm deferring to Doug on this one because he was involved in that whole process with the revolving funds. But that's one of the reasons why we're increasing that one. The net metering fund, you may recall, we're proposing to get rid of that altogether. Again, the auditors called us out for that one. They were not, they'd like to see it accounted for differently, which we did this past town meeting. If you go back and look at our budget, it jumped out to me. I said, this is 1.3 or $1.7 million higher than what it should be. And then Jody and I got into it. We had the auditors in. They said you should basically take it in as a local receipt, and then we do pay, what is it, Eversource, or who do we cut a check to?
We cut a check to, in this particular case, it's Bird Solar.
Bird Solar, and this is,
Is the name of the company, and they get 72.5% of what we take in.
yes, and that is because back in 15 or 16, we had town meeting approve a net metering agreement, which garnered a lot of solar credits for us. It was a win-win for the town, brought in additional funds for the town that we weren't able to realize before. So they just would like to see us get rid of this altogether because we're budgeting for it now. The last two is the electronic charging stations. We're in the process of, the library commissioners are pursuing a charging station over there. And quite honestly, I see more charging stations coming to Walpole. It's out there, it's important. I think we should continue to do it. There's opportunities there where we can get some funds in, but also provide a service. And quite honestly, I think electric cars are gonna be the future anyway, so. And then last one is the Adam Farm fees. And that was, Jack Wiley had come forward and asked to have that set up. So take any questions on that you may have.
So is this, it's just increasing the limit that you can take out of those funds?
Increasing the limit that can be in those funds.
Okay, so the Turco, all the synthetic fields, what's our balance in that fund now? I know we were allocating budget-wise every year.
So we do it two different ways. I remember looking, it was 234 on the capital side, last printout. So on the, we do it through these fees, but we all, because if we wait on all these fees to come in, it's gonna take, these, the Turco Field has a life of 12 years. The life expectancy is 10 to 15. So we budget for it. I think this year I put I'm recommending 75 or 100,000.
I think we were putting about 100 in, I thought.
Yeah. And so that's in a capital account that just sits there. And then this one is the fees that the youth groups pay, and I don't remember how much is in there, but I can find out.
How much is in the capital one, approximately?
Was it 234? Does that sound about, I remember, look, 234?
Thank you.
Other questions? I just want to make a comment, because Jody did, as a part of the bylaw review committee, we reached out to department heads, or Jody reached out to department heads. So it was something where she reached out, asked about the spending limits, asked about the scope, and so the numbers that you see here are good. I guess my comment in regards to the Turco Field, if it doesn't need to be changed, I don't need to change it.
Okay.
The thought process was, we don't want people thinking that we set aside $1.5 million just for Turco. And that was kind of the sole purpose behind changing it from Turco to synthetic. If you or others don't think that's necessarily a concern, I don't need the name change, but that was just that was the biggest driver.
name change, because
The only, when I wrote it, I said Turco Field and Turf Replacement Fund, and turf, again, I don't feel that strongly.
just those little things, though, we don't feel it strongly now, because we all know it, but 5 years from now,
Yeah.
someone's saying, why are you putting all the money into Turco Field?
So we could,
We
as
got
part
two
of the
other-
motion.
We got two other fields that we need to deal with.
We put it up on the board, and we'll call it Turf.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Turf Field.
yeah, Turf Field.
Yeah. Oh. Sorry, I gotta get used to this. Brian?
Thank you, Denny. Through you, just a question on the Turner Pond Fund. Does it have to be specific to Turner Pond, or would just the pond fund be good? I know the town owns multiple ponds in town, so.
So it was created specifically for Turner Pond and all the programs that they have there, the ice skating and.
Pond Committee.
Right.
But does
So
it-
I'm not sure if they're.
But is the money just used for the Turner Pond activities, where the pond committee maintains all of them, but I think that's the only one we actually spend money. We generate revenue.
Yeah, it's a revenue source, and they want to
Yeah.
keep the revenue to the facility.
With the candy that they sell and
Yeah.
the hot chocolate and everything, yeah.
Okay,
Does
thank
that
you.
answer your question, Brian? Leanne?
Yeah, I just wanted to find out how often we're able to pursue grants and other funding sources from the state for things like the electric vehicle projects or other, energy-saving type projects. Does that come along very often?
But once a year, since Walpole was designated as a green community, December 2020, I think it was, yeah. So we pursued a large grant for that's why streetlights around town are completely LED now. So that was our first project that we were going for. Electronic vehicles are an option out there to pursue next. There's also an option, HVAC systems, that they're big into. That's why I previously mentioned oil burners, because they're big into getting towns away from the oil burners, and that's how I knew we only have 3 buildings on them, so.
Thanks.
I just had a question on the EVs. Is that for building EV stations, or does that include, can people just, if you have an EV, you just charge up for free, or do you actually have to pay?
You pay the town, that's how we would take in money from that. The town would benefit from that.
So
yeah.
but we'd build it, and then,
We would build, the one that's being proposed over there is we're constructing it as part of a grant. Do you remember the details on that?
Yes, essentially, so you'd use a debit or credit card, and the fee from that, the revolving account enables that transaction, so the money comes in, and then we pay for like data, we pay for, there's a cloud-based service, and then there's like obviously a credit card processing fee that's associated with that too, so revolving fund essentially enables that transaction to occur.
so the town would make money just like a gas station, someone would pay to charge up their vehicle?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you see these kind of at grocery stores, and they're starting to pop up too.
Actually, rather good idea.
And quite honestly, the library has some lead money into it. We can't, when it was built, I think we had 120,000. We can't spend it on anything besides green incentives specifically for that project. This qualifies for it, that's why we're able to pay for it out of the library, the remaining LEED certification money out of there.
I like it, never even thought about it, that's great. Other questions? So, that's our agenda for tonight. Is there anything we want to vote on? Or get some more data, think about it, talk about potentially putting more money into
I'd like to see more
different
data.
accounts? So, yeah, why don't we figure out what we want and bring it back next
So,
meeting?
just as has been in the past, generally, if you have a question for me specifically or something, I ask that you guys go through the chair and also just let me know so Denny doesn't have to say, you know, Gene's looking for some information related to the school department. Or it just so I'm in the loop too, so Denny doesn't have to forward it to me anyways, just send it to myself and the chair, and if I can track down an answer. You know, I already have a couple of items to follow, the clerk, the town fees, as far as why did we drop down, like, I'll follow up with an additional memo in the future, following up on some of those, so for you new members, just feel free to reach out if you have a question, and we'll go from there. So what we'll do, Denny, if you're okay with it, we'll just put this on one of the future agendas to vote on these leading up to town meeting.
So our next meeting's Thursday in
Capital budget.
capital budgets.
We're voting on that Wednesday,
So you guys are meeting Wednesday.
Tuesday and Wednesday this
We'll
week.
get him up to speed for next year. And then, we're here
Worry about it,
Thursday.
Larry.
So on, Denny, on Thursday, we'll have.
Wednesday might be open.
So we'll have Chair Fosberg will be in here.
Yep.
I've also
Wednesday.
asked the department heads to,
Tuesday Zoom.
So that's good, as we go through all that, and then we can,
the department heads will either be here via Zoom or in person. So,
we're off Labor Day,
yep.
back in on Thursday the
Thursday.
8th. Talk with the school, so maybe on that 8th, we can go through all of these.
Yeah, and if, that's fine, that'll be great.
And a very short agenda this year, or this fall.
Yes, it is.
So I would ask, if you have any changes you'd like to propose, just let me know beforehand, so I can, like you mentioned tonight, one of my things on my to-do list is to follow up with the financial advisors and ask them about, will they hold us against this if we put in capital stabilization, take it out 2 years later, but yeah.
We were talking about previously about having Norfolk County come in. Is that, where we're beyond the pandemic, is that feasible or not?
So what happened is when they had that town manager meeting in June, and so that was kind of the beginning of, okay, so we talked to the town managers, the next thing is we need to talk to the payroll people, and I think that would be the time that, they would start talking about that again. It became COVID again with hybrid, so I have a meeting on Wednesday, I'll bring it up.
Thank you.
If they're willing to come in, I'll certainly have them come in.
Any other new business, questions, comments? I forgot to, I want to give Mark a pat on the back and a thank you for his
Yes,
great
for all
service
the
to this committee
years.
for many years, as the new members can see. He's a
Thank
vat
you.
of great information, and
Thank God he's still here.
yeah, exactly. So I want to make sure we did that. Otherwise, does anyone have a motion to adjourn? Second. Mark and Joseph.
Joseph, Mark, yeah, okay.
And I got to do it through the list.
Got to do it through the list, yeah.
Mark?
Yes.
I'm going to say yes. Joseph?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Adrian?
Got good practice tonight.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Scott?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Audrey?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Leanne?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes?
Doug?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
And Larry? Yes. All right. We stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.